Golf fans, welcome to another episode of Podcast and Regulation. I'm your host, RP. It's been about probably 7 weeks since the last podcast, but we have maintained some semblance of form when it comes to turning in bet sheets and at least providing you that little bit of content on the social media streams. Please, as always, follow me at Pod and Regulation on Instagram and Twitter. Podcast and Regulations, the Facebook fan page. And then if you want to reach out through email, podcastandregulation@gmail.com. Lots to go over, not just with the betting and kind of getting back into this, but life in general. Life has been pretty busy, nothing too crazy, but schedule-wise, yeah, it's been packed. Big move, and out of all of it, at least it comes with a bigger space, and this is actually my new office/studio shared with my wife, but the best part about that, honestly, is not having to set up and break down the podcast equipment time and time again every week. And sometimes on the weekends when I do provide a little bit of background and live betting and some of the updates that you sometimes see that doesn't fall on the natural progression of a Wednesday show. Today is August 20th, by the way, just another Wednesday, and it's nice getting back into it. I have missed it. I have, as you saw, still put out content on occasion. I did miss the last 2, maybe 3 weeks, but it thins out from here until the end of the calendar year because PGA certainly starts to wind down, taper off. Still pretty strong in DP World Tour schedule as well as the LPGA. Of all the betting that had gone on for the LPGA, obviously I did miss one with the AIG, but overall, I don't know. I'm just happy that I'm back doing this. I do love doing this. But it always is a lot easier just to throw out the picks and the bet sheet on any of those social streams versus getting this together and doing it all myself. But at least this environment that I am creating is a little more conducive to me being and maybe finding a little more consistency and bringing you each and every episode. So before we get into it, a little bit of a reset. As always, I am no betting professional. I love doing this because I did it anyway, and now I'm just kind of sharing the picks with you on each and every episode. So take every little bit of advice, every tidbit, any little fact that I give you about a golfer, a golf course, a tournament, take it with a grain of salt. I hope you win if you were to pick with me and play the same favorites that I do, but if you decide to fade me, no hard feelings. I hope you make money that way too. This season has been really up and down. Some big hits, but it's been a long time, and we'll see how this turns out over the 4 weeks that I'm about to recap. If you're following along, yeah, I'm looking at it. I did miss the last 3 weeks. So, in order from where we left off last time, the weeks that I'm going to be covering and kind of recapping are going to be starting with the U.S. Women's Open, the ShopRite Classic, the Mare Classic, and the Amundi Avion. And then if you're kind of looking at all the other ones, DP World Tour and all that, it's going to be the Australian Alpine Open, the KLM. I think we left any DP World Tour and major betting when the Mare Classic was going on, and then the ISCO Championship, same week as the Amundi. So let's get into it, see how we did, see how we fared, and see if I made any money. Alright, so starting up with this first week of recaps, it's the US Women's Open, as well as the Austrian Alpine Open. Came into this week at a 46-106 record with a bankroll of $1,082.92. Missed our picks of the top 10 places for the Women's Open. Heiran Ryu and Aki Iwai, not really close, didn't do too bad, but nowhere near, not even a sweat for this one. Heiran Ryu finishes at T36 and Aki Iwai finishes at T45. We did have one hit in the top 5. It was Rio Takeda. She finishes T2 at 5 under, and that got us a whopping $72.50 back. Can always use a big one like that one. It was a $10 bet, and she was plus 625. And the losers of that top 5 selections were Gino Thetical, missed cut outright. Shizato Iwai played well, T22, and a missed pick as well with Arya Chandragarn. She's always around, and I probably should have just bumped her down one. I love her in majors, love her in bigger tournaments. She finishes T9, like I said. She's 2 under. What really did her in, and I did watch a majority of rounds 3 and 4. Round 3, she shot a 75. So that's really what killed it right there. Going even, we're right in the mix, and she's possibly top 5, depending on how she handles building momentum into the last day, but oh well. One other hit that we did have, we had a grouping of first round leaders. Took Celine Boutier, Arya Jitanagarn, Jin Young Ko. All misses, but the hit was a big one. It was Yalimi No at $3.50. She was marked as a plus 3,300, shot a 68 on day 1, and that won us $119. So great start there. Didn't work out as well for the Austrian Open, but it was a good start to the weekend, or at least a good ending to the weekend, seeing all that. I guess good start as well when you're picking first round leader winners. Austrian Alpine Open, it happened again. It's 50-50, I feel like, with Joost Luiten. I bet on him big, and he comes through. And other times, even when he's playing well, I'll pick him, and it's just outright awful. He misses the cut here. It was a $38.50 bet. It was minus 143 for him to finish in the top 40. So obviously, I wasn't the only one thinking this way, and I'm also most certainly not the only one who recognizes just how well he's been playing the last 2 seasons. One that I did hit was in the top 30. It was Keita Nakajima, plus 115 for $7.75. He finishes 11th. And then we had Matthew Jordan as a miss. Actually, he withdrew from this one. This is one of the ones where he wasn't feeling well. I believe it was illness. I don't think it was necessarily an injury. So missed out on that one. And then we missed out on our 2 top 5 picks. One was pretty disappointing. It was Eugenio Lopez Chacara. I know it was plus 550, but considering how well he'd been playing, he had a couple days where he just went even, which not bad, but I expected a lot more, only because it was a precedent he set from the previous tournaments as well as his live performances. So finishes 27th at 2 under. And then someone I had liked betting on throughout the course of the year was Wenyi Ding. Finishes 51st, again 2 under, but yeah, it's whatever. You can't really do too much with that, but You'll take it where you can. He's won us some money. If you ever did find yourself betting on him as well, it just didn't come through this time. And then with the Bob McIntyre enhanced win, $8 was a plus 65, and of course that was a loss. I do have something to mention this early on. I am currently still picking, but it's really tough for me to get into it because I've been so busy. I had forgotten a couple of the early starts and a couple of the, mismanaged timings of picks for the office pools that I had. So I am extremely far behind. I was second to last out of something like 67, maybe even 70 contestants in the office pool. And I had worked my way all the way back up to about middle of the pack, like low 40s, maybe 41 or so. That's a lot of ground to make up, but I missed a couple picks. And when I say missed, I missed making the pick outright and altogether. So I'm just so far back. I kind of gave up, which is a huge no-no, and even I'm acknowledging that now, but not looking for excuses, not making excuses, not looking for anyone to forgive me for missing out on that. It was just a reality I really just had to face. Had I been able to, pick all of mine pre-weeks, weeks in advance, I would have done that, but I was caught in a place where this one specifically doesn't allow you to make a pick until the round current was over. So I couldn't make my picks all for 6 or 7 weeks at a time, and then I would have to make it as soon as I remembered on a Monday is when it was updated to make my pick for the week, and I was just horrible at it. Between everything going on at work and all the big packing and moving at home, I think it's just not worth it for me to keep going with it. I may just do the coverage and give you something to think about going into each week, and I'll still track my picks. It depends on what you guys think, if I should even dedicate any of the time or any of the minutes to adding to the podcast. Feel free to let me know, whether it's on one of the streams or DMs or email, whatever. But for me, I'm kind of checked out of it. Still betting pretty strong on everything else, but in terms of that, it was just one more thing that I fell so far back on. I I just can't find any way to justify me trying to get back in when it's really I think it's the top 4 get paid. So yeah, just kind of checked out on that guy. So for the week, we went 3-10. We had $164 on the table. The payout was $191, and so we won $27.50. Pushes our bankroll to $1,110.42 to go into the next week. Let's see. This next one is going to be the ShopRite Classic and the KLM. So, ShopRite, we had top 10 picks of Pyeong Chen. That was a miscut. We had Wei Ling Su, who, that was a hit. She finishes 10 under. That's a payout of $76.50 because it was a $9 bet for plus 750. Great odds there. And then we also hit Miyu Yamashita, who she's playing so well. She just won, was it last week or the week before? Great win there. She was $6.25 bet for a plus 145 payout. Ended up getting us $15.31. Then on to our top 5 selections. Nelly Korda, she was a miss. She finishes 8 under and T15, so good overall tournament for her, just not good enough for us. Rio Takeda, who is having a sensational season. T63 finishes even par. Not a good tournament, not a good showing out there for her, although I was expecting a lot there. I'm not sure why. Can't exactly tell you. It was kind of a gut feeling between how she's performed overall this year, and then you add that to this. I just figured she was in line for another good finish. What we did hit was May Saigo, $11 plus 775. She finishes 5th, right on the button, but this bet was a T5, 5 tied or better. The 10 under finish got us $96.25. So another good strong start for that week. Good finish. First round leaders, none of them hit. Ayaka Furue, Jin Young Ko, Nelly Korda, and Somi Lee, all misses. And then into the KLM, we had Julian Guerrier. He had a WD. I can't remember. This is so far back now. I can't remember what that was for. I think that itself was an injury. In our top 30 bets, we had Ugo Kusad, was a missed cut. Jaden Shaper, which we did hit, he finishes 4 under as a $10.80 win. And then Brandon Stone with a missed cut. Top 20, Keita Nakajima, that was a missed cut, so another miss there for us. Top 10, Christopher Wrighton. I like him a lot on so many levels, and over the course of these last weeks when I did put in bets, he was a strong consideration in most, if not all. So you'll see his name sprinkled throughout from here until our episode today, and then probably even further along into the season as the DP World Tour starts to kind of wind down around this time. But there's still plenty of tournaments to take in, especially with thinned out fields, tournaments where guys are probably going to take some time off and start allowing themselves to wind down towards the end of the season. 2 top 10 picks that we had taken was Christopher Wrighton and Andre Pavon. Both of them, Christopher Wrighton was pretty close. 13th overall, solo 13, -3 to finish, and what really hurt was around 275. So you take that off, and he's right in the mix for us. Even one stroke puts him back at, I think it was a T9. So it went from T9 to T13, or excuse me, T9 to T11. So there was a good gap for him to potentially have made us some money, just didn't go there. And then top 5 pick was Hao Tong Lee. It was an $8.50 bet at plus 550. I never really know what to make of him other than when he's hot, he's hot. You can count on him for an easy top 20 and not having to sweat that at all. Or he does this and he goes 60th. So still trying to figure out him, just like anything in golf. Don't know what to think of him or what to quite believe in when it comes to how consistent a player is. He's been around a while. He's had some wins here and there, but this one has probably been the most up and down, with also kind of tying in with the most amount of success he's had throughout the course of his career up until this point. So when you look at some of his finishes that are on the lower end, you probably see something that is closer to kind of his average, his par. But because of some of his successes, his top 10s, top 20s, those hiccups are getting bigger. So that variation of of where he falls starts to get bigger and bigger as well. So I don't know what to do with him from here on out. I'll continue to look at him. I've been monitoring him. He's still playing pretty well, but those disparities in his highs and lows are still so big. I don't know which way to go. Is to fade him or to actually bet on him consistently and hopefully one of those or several of those pay out for the end of the year. And then the one and done office pool, I took Ryo Hisatsune in the enhanced win at plus 8,000. It was an $11 bet, and that of course was a loss. So this week went 4-12 between these two tournaments. On the table had $135.25. Total payout was $198.86, meaning we did win $63.61. And going into this next week, we're coming in with a bankroll of $1,174.03, as well as a record of 53-28. So next two rounds here are going to go pretty quick, mainly because if you've been keeping track, I went over, not only for the week of the Mayor Classic, but the week after as well. So I'll just close that right now. 0-7 pushes me to 53-135. But here's how it played out. The Mayor Classic, top 10 picks: Sarah Smelzel, Shizato Iwai, and Miyu Yamashita. All missed. Not even really close. Closest was Miyu Yamashita with a T50. Finished 3 under. The other two missed cut. And then top 5, Ayaka Furue finishes T36 at 5 under. Ryo Takeda finishes T54 at 2 under. And then Jin Young Ko missed cut. First round leaders, all misses as well. Yulimi No tried to go back to that well. Hannah Green, Heijin Choi, Ayaka Furue. So nothing hits at all. On the table, we only had $71. So subtracting that from our bankroll going into this week for the Mayor Classic, we finish $1,103.03. And like I said, I'm just going to go right into this one because the next week, pretty much the same results as in no wins. Went 0-11, so pushes the overall record to 53-46. We had $109.25 on the table, and that was spread out through the Amundi Avion Open. We had a top 10 finish for Miyu Yamashita, Somi Lee, both finishing T14, so not horrible, but 1 round for one and 2 rounds for the other kind of did them in where they were right even or just over at like 1 or 2 over. But the other days, they were right there. They put themselves into contention to possibly get us a win, but just those 2 days, or 1 day at least for Miyu, put us outside of what we were hoping for. Top 5 picks, we had Heijin Choi, Esther Henselite, and Aki Iwai. The latter missing the cut outright. Heijin Choi also finishing at T14, and then Esther Henselite at T49. To win, we were really close with the Minji Lee call, but she finishes only at 13 under, so T3 for her, and Ayaka Furue finishing at T59 at 2 over. And then the ISCO, I think I mentioned it as a DP World Tour event. It's a PGA Tour event. Took Carson Young at plus top 40. That was a minus 115, so should have been good money, not great money. Missed the cut at 7 over. 2 choices that I had taken in the top 30, Kazuma Kabori, missed cut, plus 6, and Caleb Taryn, T34, shot even. And then my top 10 pick, Sam Ryder, plus 500. Thought he'd do well in this tournament for whatever reason. Misses the cut all together. So with the 109.25 on the table, it actually gets us under 1,000 now. So we're at $993.78. So let's take a look at what we're doing this week. All right, preview time. So we have the CPKC for the LPGA. The Women's Open is going to be up in Canada. A little bit of an elevation change, nothing big, pretty subtle. But one thing I do kind of remember, if it was last year or the year before, I don't know if this is a traveling venue for this specific tournament, but it is pretty tree-lined. And there are, I believe, more than a handful of holes where the water comes into play. It's the Credit River, and that just kind of sneaks around the entire course. So you'll see it come into play different points, not just one or a couple here or there. It's pretty random, but it's a gorgeous looking track. Lots of slopes. Honestly, I don't think there'll be too many players struggling to putt on this one. Short game is going to come into play if you have a really tight one on some of these tightly cut holes and these greens. You probably gain an advantage there. There are some pretty deep bunkers, which for the most part I think would act as deterrents throughout the course, not just in the middle of fairway, but some of the track that as they run up into the greens, you will see them play some factor other than just the green side. So I'm trying to take a look at this aerial right now, and it does look like there are a few that you wouldn't really think would come into play, but if you're driving long and then have this awkward in from there, you may maybe step back a little bit and not end up taking the straightest line to the cup. And then the key stats we're looking at for this one are going to be approach and greens in regulation. Even though this is tree lined, once you do have a vision and you do have a pretty good sight towards the green, you do stand a good chance of getting there in regular, with some sort of regularity. And then par 4 scoring is going to be looked at as a premium in this as well. The third and last, well, I guess not so much last, it's kind of a combination. It's off the tee and driving accuracy. It really does hurt when you go wayward, but the first cut, not a big deal. You can get out of there. This isn't set up like a major. This isn't going to be set up to something where they are trying to penalize you in bunches and trying to ruin your day, trying to ruin your scorecard. But there are some spots where if you go way too far, cutting a corner or driving into a corner, if you outrun it and get in further than that first cut, that's where it leaves you with probably a little bit of a conundrum. You're looking to pitch out or you're looking to advance, but you really don't have much of a second shot in these par 4s of getting home in regulation. Some of these that I'm going to be throwing in, by the way, it's a par 71, 6,661 yards. So going into my faves and fades, Lottie Wood just won, and she has impressed me over the last few weeks. Even though I hadn't bet on the LPGA, watching and still paying attention to it has been really fun, seeing some of these rookies having the impact that they are having in their first year. Pretty exciting, pretty awesome. It's such a variance on the DP World Tour and on the PGA Tour. You can pretty much find some consistency when it comes to watching LPGA. Even if they are rookies, they may have their ebbs and flows, but for whatever reason, that variance is a lot less volatile than it is on some of the men's tour. You know, you could always attribute it to driving accuracy, driving distance, and that correlation. But overall, you know, Lottie Wood, the twins, Aki and Shizato, I mean, just having a great year. Along with the rest of the faves, I'm going with Aki Iwai, Mei Saigo, Ryo Takeda, Madeline Sagstrom. I feel like this may be a good place to pick her in a top 20, and that's only if you can find that bet on your sportsbook. If you can, I'd say nail it and throw it on, but with the 4 that I'm looking at now, they're only going as far as the top 10. Kind of feels like the usual, so I may have to back off of her. But if I were given the opportunity of the top 20, this would be a spot where I would take her. She may end up making a bet for me somewhere in the 3-ball or versus matchups. And then last but not least, to round it off, Andrea Lee. She's been really consistent this year. I can't say that she's ever really had a breakout within the season, but overall she hasn't played horribly, and her worst days really aren't that bad. She's making cuts, she's making money, but she's never really cracked anything too high on a regular basis this season. And then as for the fades, we've kind of flipped it. We know Shizato Iwai she got us to such a hot start, and her sister did too, relatively speaking. If you obviously didn't watch, or Shizato wasn't on tour this time around, you would say Aki Iwai was having a really good season. But now it's kind of flipped. You saw some weird natural transition as Shizato's fallen behind a little bit and kind of taken those spots where Aki was when the season started, and now Aki coming on strong. She has a win. Both of them have a win this season. So, like I said, phenomenal starts for both of these. And I am fading Nelly Korda, Lynn Grant, Alim Kim, and Brooke Henderson. There are a lot of people who are, it's not a hype train, but I think they're hoping for a comeback, especially being in Canada. Brooke Henderson coming back and doing some damage and showing that she's looking back in form this late in the season, but I'm not quite there yet. Again, just like with any other tournament, I tell you, if I can catch them on the uptick just a little bit late, that's fine. I don't have to be early. I don't have to be the first one to the party. So give me another week or two, especially based on how she performs here at the CPKC for Brick, and then maybe I'll jump on that train. That being said, I'm going to go with, I'm just going to throw out all the bets for the LPGA in this here. Start with the top 10s. I'm taking Mei Saigo. She's a plus 310 to finish in the top 10. Rio Takeda is plus 310. And then Andrea Lee, plus 350. So definitely sticking with what I just mentioned for faves and fades. Top 5, we're going Aki Iwai, plus 525. I think she just continues to go. Unfortunately, her sister started off strong, kind of tapering off. Aki's gaining a lot of ground and finishing really strong. I don't see any reason why I would back off of her right now, considering that the last 4 weeks have been really solid, and I don't really see a drop off. And then Lottie Wode, who not only am I taking her in the top 5 as a plus 240, I think she actually could go back to back. I don't see any problem here with her not falling off and not having some sort of victory hangover. I think even though that was her maiden victory, I think she easily could carry that momentum into this week. So look out for her. I could be wrong. Maybe there is a little bit of a hangover and not so much in that literal sense of all that, but there could be some relief and she still decides to play, and it's all good. But I don't know. Something tells me something similar to Aki Iwai, that you can build momentum off of a win and not feel like there's a huge drop off and all of a sudden you don't know how to swing for a little bit while you try to get your bearings and try to get back on track. And then in the versus category, I am taking Arya Jaitanargarn at minus 110 versus Shizato Iwai. That was just a really good, juicy number. Minus 110 for Arya on a lot of places, especially with a little bit of a downturn for Shizato. I'll take that any day. This may be one bet where I really load up. And then we're going 3-ball over 72 holes. Excuse me, the versus is versus Arya versus Shizato over 72. This is 3-ball over 72 holes. I'm taking Nelly Korda plus 120 versus Hannah Green versus Mei Saigo. And then I am going with Bailey Tardy. Well, not going with, but the next round is Bailey Tardy versus Heiran Ryu versus, and of course, Madsen. I think the latter may be okay. She may be able to keep up for a little bit, but over the course of 72, I think Heiran takes that. And Heiran Ryu's minus 140. And considering how much time I don't have left to get this done before I have to go back to work, we move on to the Betfred Masters, and we're jumping into the faves and fades. I think this is a pretty strong field, pretty solid. A lot of guys are looking to make their run to hopefully make it onto the Ryder Cup for the side, so seeing some of these guys play well is always in their best interest, but now there's a little added pressure. We'll see how that goes for guys like Rasmus Højgaard. I'm going to start out with the fade list, and he starts there. So I'm fading Rasmus Højgaard. It's not that I don't think he can make a charge to make a name for himself in this tournament as well as make the Ryder Cup. I just feel like there's been a lot of up and down, and I don't know where to rank him right now. And honestly, whenever I trust my gut when it comes to something like that, if you've had really high highs and, again, bottoming out lows, it's just hard to gauge how you now perform under pressure when you haven't been able to even find that consistency in a swing or sometimes in his case with a putter. I'm fading Matthew Jordan, someone who also has had a little bit of a problem at times this year with the flat stick. Patrick Rogers, I'm just not liking the trend, but there are a lot of people who are kind of on that bandwagon for this one. more power to you. I just don't see it happening here. There are a lot of other guys on DP World Tour that we've all paid attention to, especially if you've listened to this podcast, that I think can outperform him and easily push him further down the ranks and probably further down the list than some people are expecting. Tristan Lawrence, a little bit of a surprise probably for me to want to put him on there, but again, kind of the same deal. I don't think he'll play poorly. I just think there are way more names who actually will make a little bit more noise here going into this. And then Marcus Kinhult, staying away from him. And another one that everyone is kind of high on right now when you're looking at some of these books, Eddie Pepperell. He's had a really good mid-grade consistent type of year. And I have taken him at times. You've seen it on some of the bet sheets. This time around, I don't know. We're going gut feeling again, not quite there. These gut feelings are definitely more, skewed towards not having a great feeling at each and every outing for these guys. And then when you hit these faves, there's course history, there's current trend, there's current position in the race points. So not only do they have something to lose and some ground to lose if they were not to be able to perform well here, they've just had a better overall and consistent one where their ups and downs are still upper echelon. They're better than just making the cut. They're making money. They're finishing in the top 50s on a consistent basis, and that's kind of what you look for. Obviously, I have bet on long shots. I've bet on some guys who their season looks like the EKG machine. But on the fave side, there's a lot more where I feel like I can count on them, where their game's at, and how well they've played at some of these venues already. So starting it off is Johannes Veerman. A few people have noted that he has played well, and he's had quite a few tournaments where 3 rounds have been absolutely money, and it looks like he's on his way to either a win or a really solid top 10, top 5 finish. And there's that one day, whether it's 2, 3, or 4, I don't think I've ever really seen him, shoot himself out of anything in day one. I'm sure it's happened, but nothing that comes to mind right now. But I am taking him. He's plus 100 just to make the top 40, and that's probably the one I'm leaning on the most, just even money for the most part. Matthew Fitzpatrick, Marco Peng, Andy Sullivan, Brian Robinson-Thompson, Laurie Cantor, Christopher Wrighton, and Brant Snedeker, I think could potentially make some noise here, and I don't know. He could be a sneaky one. He's always a sneaky one on PGA Tour. I have no reason to believe that all of a sudden he falls off, especially going over to a DP World Tour event. He should play fairly well. How high? I'm not sure. I'm thinking probably like plus 30 or something, or excuse me, 30 or better. Making my decision now, along with Johannes Veerman at top 40. I'm also taking Andy Sullivan. He's minus 150. Then going into top 30 finishes, Snedeker is plus 275. I think that's really good value for where they're listing him right now. Brian Robinson-Thompson plus 220, so those two. And then we go to top 20s. I think Christopher Wrighton at plus 140 is a solid pick. And then Laurie Cantor, who's had a really good year. We jumped on him early. If you've bet on him, you should have made some money here and there with him. He's a plus 145. I don't have any any top 10 finishes, but I do have 2 top 5 finishes. Matthew Fitzpatrick, that's kind of speaks for itself. It's plus 260. So also, book feels like unless somebody just plays better than him, he's kind of made for this. He knows it well. And I don't know, there's something about setting as well that fits him and makes me feel like this is a tournament for him to either win or at least put himself in contention and finish in the top 3. So that's kind of what I'm imagining. And then Marco Peng, plus 475. This is one that probably veers off of all the rationale I put into the faves, and it kind of creeps more into the fades. This is more of a gut pick. He has had a really good season. He's shown he could play. He's had a really, I don't know if it's any sort of breakout, but the consistency has been way better than what I've seen of others. So I don't see any reason why he would just fall off the cliff here. So that's also part of the reasoning. So there is something there other than just going with a feel bet. But I think that may be just a good lining up of the stars for him in this tournament. So top 5 finish for him. That's all I have for this week, guys. May look at a little bit of a reset for the next episode. We'll recap this week. We will get into all the hopes and dreams of what I have envisioned for this podcast in this new quote-unquote studio office, and kind of lay out what's going to happen over the next few months as the PGA Tour side winds down. We still have plenty to bet on with the DP World Tour and with the LPGA. No On the Clock segment. Still trying to get into this, but I hope you guys have a great weekend. Hope you enjoy this podcast. There's your recap. Hopefully you made money and especially faded me the last 2 weeks that I had put out picks. That should have made you a lot there. But anyway, I will see you guys on Wednesday next week with the recap and the preview. I'm RP. This is Podcast and Regulation. You all have a good one. Appreciate you.